Vertus Verbis Podcast disclaimer. The information presented in this podcast is for entertainment, informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended as legal, professional, or financial advice and should not be construed as such. Content and topics shown or discussed may not be accurate nor up-to-date information. Laws and regulations change frequently and vary by location, jurisdiction, and by nation. You should consult with a qualified legal or financial professional for advice specific to your situation. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship. The views expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not reflect the views of the podcast as a whole. The host is not responsible for any errors or omissions in the information provided or for any actions taken based on the content of this podcast. We are not liable for any losses, damages, or consequences arising from the use of this information. By listening to this podcast, you agree to hold the host and any guests harmless from any decisions you make, or from any losses, damages, or other claims arising from the use of this information.
All right, we're back.
All right, welcome back, everybody. So now we're just going to go into the commentary for the family. And just a spoiler warning first, because of the topics that we're going to be talking about. A lot of the things will already have been, hopefully you've already seen. If not, please go ahead and go to the video and enjoy the full video first before coming back and listening to us going to a deeper dive about the creation behind the scenes of the family.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the title of the story. So what inspired you to choose this title of the story that you wrote?
Right. The family, the way I was approaching this, and obviously this is my first story, and I haven't written stories in a very long time, but I wanted something short, got the point across. And one of the key things that, again, dialing into Bitcoiner fears is the fact that you have this thought of saving for your future generations, right? So therefore, hence the family. And I think that's where it's a little bit of a different take. This story is definitely a darker take on what, in this case, the main character, I would say, is the old man that's being hospitalized, that was in a coma, and basically how his family ends up treating him. But we can dive into that a little bit later, I guess, as we progress through the questions.
Sure, of course. So then I guess what that leads into is what inspired you to write this particular story?
Right. And so again, very much so the concept of the family, it is very important. I guess the difference here is with the family, it's not your typical happy-go-lucky where it's like everything works out. This is the exact opposite, where you would think the family would be in a good place, but they're not. And there's definitely something there, right? The story is quite short. I mean, the story itself is only about 6 minutes, if I remember correctly. But the fact that there are underlying tones of unhappiness or discontent, there's definitely history there. So no matter how much the father, so to speak, father figure wanted to do the best, what he thought was the best, didn't exactly turn out to be what the children perceived as being the best for them.
Yeah, right? It definitely came across in the tones and the dialogue that they had between each other, between like the son and the doctor, and like how the son treated the sister. Like there was definitely some tension there. I mean, of course, there's probably different aspects of it causing that. I'm guessing you definitely could feel it when you're listening to the story.
Right.
That the family wasn't a tight-knit family. It was kind of like held together by threads at the best, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so then I guess what leads to what's the moral of the story, that and why is that important?
The moral here is losing sight of what the definition of family means, right? For Henri, or Henry, the father figure. He spent his life trying to go after the wealth and trying to save that for his family, but he ended up putting his family through a lot of hardship in order to achieve his goals. And even though when he actually achieved it, in the end, the family didn't appreciate it whatsoever, and instead subjugated him to abuse, right? Literally mental abuse. Not particularly because they're sadistic. It's just that they simply don't care for him anymore. And they would rather get the wealth that he supposedly would have handed over to them. But again, due to his the way he wanted to secure his wealth and to ensure that no one could easily take it away, and coming up with schemes like a song, right? And
Yeah.
not properly communicating with his children. That all led to the demise, so to speak, or the consequences of it being locked in his head, right? And obviously
Yeah.
him being in a coma, potentially with some brain damage, right? It's questionable at the end of the story whether it can even be retrieved, right? And so hence I guess the irony of it all is this person's focused so much on what it could have been, and basically forego what the family really should be, and that really should have been his focus, right? Arguably.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the ideal family versus what actual happened, like in this story, the actual family that turned out to be,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
the kind of juxtaposition of those things.
Yeah, everyone turned out to
Yeah.
be almost like a monster in a way.
Yeah. Okay, that's really cool. And then of course, while writing this story, did you come across anything worth noting or interesting during the writing of it?
Um, yeah, like I really wanted to drive home that there were three children. Not two, not
Mm,
one. I needed
mm,
a relationship dynamic between the three. I
yeah.
wanted to make sure it was obvious that the eldest son was a real bastard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but as you go through the story, it's realized that it isn't purely his fault, right? There were a
Yeah.
lot of things that happened in the past that have makes basically he shut himself off.
Right.
And then we have the second child where he basically he only has one line, but the way he
Yeah.
answers it is he's like he has no feelings, like he's a robot,
Right.
right? So he's
Yeah.
also shut himself off. He's literally shut off his emotions.
Yeah.
It might not be as clear because he's only got one line of dialogue, but that was the
Right.
intention. And then the
Okay.
daughter is the more sympathetic one,
Yeah.
where we can tell from the story that she actually has, or at least with Henri, the main character, the father, he has
Mm,
memories, um, happy memories with her. Not to say that there weren't happy memories with the other children or with the family,
mm-hmm.
but the one that stood out was the one with Ellie, the daughter. And Ellie was meant to juxtapose the two brothers, where she is the more sympathetic. Purposely, I picked a female daughter, right, to go against the two brothers that were cold
Mm-hmm.
or pretty much shut down, to give that contrast. And so that was the intention. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely picked up on the fact that, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Mm.
like, because he's going through this torturous process,
Hmm.
that the only thing that could still kind of make him go through with it, or not just kind of give up on
Hmm.
his current life or situation, was the fact that he remembered about his daughter, and
Right.
that memory alone kind of puts him in a sane type of situation, because it seems like the machine almost drives the person insane,
Right.
or at least puts him in such horrible pain that,
Right.
like, it's not worth continuing on, right?
Absolutely. And so again, it's that irony of the fact that he has to rely on the happy memories, which he should have spent most of his time cultivating with his family. That was
Absolutely.
the only thing that keeps him from going insane. So
Hmm.
that is, yeah, I guess that is that irony of it all, right? Is
Yeah.
he really should
Yeah.
have spent his time with his family is the short of it.
Once again, I know this is, I don't know which order people will be listening to this podcast
Hmm.
in, but this is the one of the first stories that you've written, and it obviously inspired me to jump in there and kind of throw my hat in the ring and try
That's
my hand
awesome.
at it as well too. So what is the story going to be? Is it like a one-off, or do you feel like you're going to make a sequel out of it?
Yeah, I interesting enough, I had the same question from one of my friends that I shared it with, and his
Okay.
question was, "Hey, so like he basically said, I'm interested in finding out in the future or in the next story whether they're able to get it out of the father or he's able to remember
Yeah.
it." And my answer to him was no. Like this to me, this story was a standalone piece. The story ends. There
Mm.
is no, for this particular story, there is no happy ending, because
Mm,
it's meant to basically force the audience to really do a little bit of thought, right? Like, what
yeah.
is it in life that we want out of life? What is the
Yep.
real meaning of the family? And it, the children are already rich, right? We know that from the
Right.
dialogue, and yet they
Yeah.
still feel that there's a need to get the Bitcoin that's locked in their
Yep.
father's head. In theory, they don't have to, but of course, the reasoning here is that there's this company that they're running, and
Yeah.
it's going to go down the hole if they're not able to use the Bitcoin as a pristine hard asset on their balance sheets,
Yeah.
right? And so that's a theme that's ongoing in current day, where a lot of companies, not a lot, but there's a few that are starting
Mhm.
to adopt this strategy. And I simply
Right.
just took it forward and I said, what happens in the future where everyone or every company, a lot of them at least, realize that they need to have this? It's just par for the course, right? You don't have
Yeah.
it, then the market's not going to value you the same way. So you're forced to
Yeah.
have it. And when that happens, what happens to the companies that just can't get it, right? I
Hmm.
mean, the company might be somewhat profitable, but it's not going to be hand over fist profitable every single year. So
Right.
at what point does it put them into a disadvantage? And that was kind of what I
Right.
wanted to explore, but not with
Yeah.
so many words, right? There's a little
Yeah.
there's a bit of it that's implied that that is what it takes to survive from a corporate standpoint, and that's the
Hmm.
drive for the two elder brothers. The sister, not so much. You can kind of tell she'd rather forego the Bitcoin and just
Yeah.
not have the father, to be tormented in such a way. But
Yep. Definitely
the
sense that. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. She wanted to be the one to be like, kind of like, hey, we're going too far with this, and kind of reel it back to be like, let's just kind of go back to the happier days as well, too, kind of thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So then, do you think this story is relatable to people who don't understand Bitcoin?
I think so. I try to always imagine, if this story didn't mention Bitcoin, would it still be a story? And I
Right.
think very much so. I think the only key difference here is that I think most people who don't understand Bitcoin don't realize that you really can take Bitcoin to the grave, so to speak, right? Because
Yeah.
if those secret keys or whatever aren't written down or stored safely or whatever,
Yeah.
and someone's just purely using their memory to it could be 12 words or whatever, 24 words. Let's say it was 12, right? If
Hmm.
they lose their memory or accident, they're in a coma, there's no way to get that. I don't know.
Right.
So in this case,
Yeah.
this story is already in the future, where they have
Yeah.
technology that can try to rebuild and try to dig through the patient's mind, right? But how
Yeah.
successful that is still questionable, because it is a very new prototype type technology. And so
Yep.
the point here is, like, if you don't store and communicate your potential wealth to your family and treat your
Yep.
family well, this
Hmm.
is potentially what could happen, where they could treat you, or if they're bad, right,
Yeah.
treat you
Yeah.
not as human as you would want them to. So
It's almost like a form of hypnosis done on the dead, or like at least a coma in a comatose state.
yeah, it's like a brutal form of resurrection, but it's not really,
Mm.
right? Like, they're
Yeah.
forcing him to
Yeah.
come back to a mental state, but it's yeah, it's not a happy thing. So yeah, again,
Hmm. Yeah.
it's a
Sounds
darker path.
sounds pretty brutal.
Yeah, indeed.
So then, what about the character names? I especially found the father's name quite unique.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, was there any additional meaning or thought that went into creating that name?
Yes, there was. I was thinking more of like a European family. So the
Okay. Yeah.
father was probably most likely a foreign immigrant, right?
Yeah.
And then, but the children, their names were more North American,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And the when I was putting together the name of the father, I was trying to something that was like, okay, sounded like more regal, or maybe had some background, right? And started
Okay.
looking up
Yeah.
the meanings of names, and I kind of gravitated towards like French names.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Not to say that the father was from royalty, but it was to kind
Mhm.
of give an idea that he established himself in a way that he had like a corporate empire to some degree, not a
Right.
huge one, but that was to
Yeah.
give that idea. And
Cool.
then breaking down his name Henri and Etienne, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Henri, I think, meant something like, I'd have to look it up again, but it was something like the it's real, I think it refers to home or something like that.
Oh,
And
okay.
then
Okay. Yeah.
Etienne if I remember correctly, is the crown, so kind of like the head of the home
Oh.
was what I was trying to convey. But it was exactly that
Oh.
purpose, that his head
Yeah.
wasn't there, right? Like it
Interesting.
mentally wasn't there, and
Yeah.
he was no longer in control, right? That, and so there
Right.
was that play on it. But
Cool.
of course, it's not obvious because it's just me thinking through the thought process of what
No,
did
that's
I want to
cool
name
though.
the character. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Like I
something
mean,
like that.
it gives meaning to the whole. I mean, it really is about him. I mean, once we
Mm-hmm.
go through the commentary, like you literally see it's all about him as the main focus. Even though, yes, there's all these things going around him, we can definitely feel that. That's it gives
Mm-hmm.
off that vibe that
Mm-hmm.
he's going through that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so then the last part before we go into actually the commentary over the video, looking back, if there was anything you could add or change or remove, what would that one thing? What would that be, and
Mm.
why?
So with doing a first one, and there's bound to be boatloads of mistakes. I'm sure I'll find more later. But one of the things that I realized was when using AI narration, you can actually
Hmm.
prompt the AI to say it a different way. And I didn't know that, and that's on me.
Hmm.
But what I
Learning
did,
process, though. Yeah,
right. And so
yeah.
when I was using the tool,
Hmm.
I ended up generating the part where the older brother yells at his sister in an
Ah,
angry
right.
tone. And I was
Yeah.
trying to get that, but I couldn't get it. So I had to basically regenerate that
Oh.
that phrase a whole bunch of times, or that sentence, that
Oh.
dialogue piece, until
Yeah.
the AI randomly gave me what I want. Now, even
Oh.
then, the AI was
Yeah.
like, the pitch was way off. Like the AI was literally screaming. So I didn't want it to be like that. So I had to kind of like basically tone down the audio a little bit to bring the
Yeah.
volume down. Otherwise, you can
Okay.
tell it when the brother's like talking to the sister. He's supposed to be angry, but he's not supposed to be screaming.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I given what I could do at the time, I basically
Sure.
reduced the
Sure.
volume a little bit so that he wasn't
Hmm.
too over the top, but it still
Hmm.
gave the feeling that it was a lot more emotional than the rest of the dialogue that he had. So that was kind of like
Oh,
the one interesting bit.
I think it came across really well.
Oh, okay.
Not if you didn't say that, I wouldn't have known that it was not done on purpose. I think it fit perfectly well with, like, from what I could tell in
Mm.
terms of how he would react in the position that he was, and it
Mhm.
it definitely gave a lot of insight in that character of the
Mhm.
relationship between each other
Oh,
when I
thank you.
heard that or heard him say that. So that was really cool.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
It's good to hear.
And then yeah, so that wraps up the
Okay,
questions. I
awesome.
think we can go
So
into the
pivot
commentary then.
to the
Yeah.
commentary. Okay, let me
Yeah.
pop that on the screen. One of the things that I guess I'll talk about, and it's a little bit out of sequence, but circling
Yeah.
back to the family situation, through the
Mhm.
dialogue of the older brother, we get a picture of how the father wasn't always there, right? The fact that the
Yeah.
mother left the family to simply
Mhm.
straight up, I mean, that's not an easy thing, right? To straight up abandon the whole entire family, not just
Yeah.
leave with the children. She just literally left because she just couldn't take it anymore, right? And
Yeah.
so that's supposed to convey a sense of that the father just simply wasn't there to be a father or a husband, right?
Right.
There was
Yeah.
that sense of neglect, and
Mhm.
no one could reason with him, and so the mother just gave up. And of course the children continued on, but it's also not clear on purpose as to how old they were when the mother left, right? So there's a little bit of that in
Right.
play. But ultimately,
Mhm.
we do understand that the older brother takes over the company because the father gets into an accident, right, where he goes into a
Mhm.
coma. So we have to at least understand that the older brother is of adult age, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind
Yeah.
of the that's what's implied, right?
Mm.
But yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
Cool.
this part here, it's basically showing Henri, main character, I guess you can say, where I had to basically tell the AI to generate me. I wanted the three siblings to be looking at the father, But no matter
Yeah.
how I asked the AI to do it, it just couldn't. So the best I could get was
Right.
two men looking at
Yeah.
Henri in this case, supposedly
Yeah.
wearing the headgear with the wires going up in the ceiling, right?
Looks cool. Yeah.
To try to keep it like high tech, but not too overly blown tech. To like
Right.
just to give enough idea that there was enough gear there to do what it needed to do, and
Yeah.
it worked out okay and
Yeah.
overall.
No, it looks really good. Is it supposed to be symmetrical like that? Like I can kind of sort
No,
those
I
two lights.
suspect the AI just likes to keep
Oh,
it
okay.
symmetrical, maybe because it knows maybe human beings prefer symmetry, and so it
Okay. Okay.
tries potentially to introduce it. I generated some images where it wasn't like that,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
this one seemed to work out better because you kind of, in a sense, you get the sense that the two brothers are there, supposedly brothers, could be a doctor and a brother,
Mm.
but at least two
Yeah.
authority figures, and the
Yeah.
daughter's nowhere in sight, right? So that kind of
Mm.
works, right? Kind of like she's like
Yeah.
an afterthought. Yeah.
What about the choice of music that you chose? What do you, how did that kind of come about and how did that fit into this?
Yeah. I definitely wanted something that was eerie, like unsettling.
Mm.
That was what I
Yeah.
was going after. Nothing
Yeah.
upbeat whatsoever. It wasn't even meant to be. I think if I remember correctly, it was more like orchestral.
Okay. Yeah.
Right,
It was.
to
Yeah.
kind
So
of
yeah.
give a
Mhm.
feeling of like eeriness. The fact that it's a high tech hospital or some type of facility, but at the same
Mhm.
time, it's like a prison, right?
Mhm.
The interesting
Yeah.
about this part is because it's AI, the AI decided to give me more of like a drawn version, and I was asking the
Yeah.
AI, hey, I need a scene where the daughter's crying and pleading to have the father released, and that's what it gave me. And I'm like, of all the images I could generate, that was the best one, even though it doesn't
Okay.
quite tie in with the theme of like, oh, this looks real and that's like a drawn picture. But like, I'm like, okay, I mean that's the picture I could get, so I'll use it. And
It's pretty
um,
cool though. I mean, sometimes that
like a
adds an effect
contrast.
too,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought it was neat that how it was like a
Mm,
different view altogether. And it, as for me, it sort of played into the fact that the daughter had a softer look
yes.
to her father
Yeah.
too, versus how this is much colder when it's like the two, whether it's a doctor or the two other
Yes.
siblings,
Right.
like looking in on their father, which is more one's like more realistic
Impersonal.
kind of like
Yeah.
in reality, the other one's more fairy tale like more make
Mm-hmm.
believe, so that
Mm-hmm.
kind of lend to the story, I thought, as well.
Yeah. The coldness, the facelessness, the
Yeah.
impersonal feeling, whereas the daughter has a
Yeah.
face, has a caring
Yeah.
look, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in its sense, in that sense, it worked out. I was like, yeah, you know what? Okay,
Yeah, that's
let's
good.
use it. Yeah,
It's like a happy mistake if it wasn't meant to be.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I think the next part is the part where we dive into Henri's mind space, and this is what
Oh,
he
yeah,
sees
yeah,
in
yeah.
his head. And
That's
I
right.
basically said, hey, AI, get me a picture of a little girl happy playing in a garden, right? And this is supposed to
Mm.
be Henri watching his daughter play. And
Mhm.
the interesting part here is I was trying to get the other AI, the music AI, to give me a song, and it's great. You can give it lyrics, and I gave it specific lyrics.
Yeah.
And the thing was, I tried to generate it a few times, and the best one was the first one. However, the
Yeah.
music that it played was too uplifting. As you can hear, there's a
Ah,
guitar and it's very happy. And I'm like,
yeah.
okay, but at the same time, this scene is meant to be distorted, right? So what I
Yeah.
had to do was I actually had to slow down the music to make it drawn
Yeah.
out with a very slowed effect, and that gave it that distorted feeling. So you could still hear what the girl is singing, but it becomes across as very, very distorted in nature to represent that his mind isn't all there. Like he can barely put that
Right.
together. And that was the feeling
Yeah.
that I was trying to convey. Yeah.
I actually tried to listen to the lyrics. I don't think I could really make out actual
Mm.
words. Maybe that was intentional. I think maybe like to kind of simulate that, or maybe I couldn't quite pick it up because of the volume that I had it on. But were we supposed to
You
be able to listen to hear
Yeah,
what it was? Yeah.
I made it so that you can make out the words, but
Oh, okay,
it
okay, okay.
wasn't meant to be crystal clear either. So
Right.
it's
Right.
best to be like, oh, I think I heard a word, and that's
Yeah.
kind of like partially getting one of the secret keywords, so to speak,
Gotcha.
but not
Gotcha.
being able to
Yeah.
get the rest, right? And
Nice.
so that's a
Nice.
little bit of a play on that. Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. I like that.
Cool.
No,
You know, I
very
think
good.
that's the end of
Yeah.
it.
Nice.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thanks for coming on to talk about the story. It was a good one.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.